Hi guys, so in this video I'm going to be going over the practical exercise step by step, sort of how it is that I want you to go through it, how it is that I want you to explain the instructions to the cadets, and how I want you to interact with them while you're doing the exercise. I've already given some instructions for the practical exercise, but this video will just be, a little bit more explanation on that in case you might need it. But I think you should be pretty good if you just read those instructions at the beginning and sort of follow those steps as you go through the exercise. You probably shouldn't have any problems. So it says you will have 2 cones for this exercise. Actually, we're going to, I couldn't get enough cones, so we're going to have land nav points. Doesn't make much of a difference. We'll be using like some of the checkpoints that we use, either red or yellow, as the target itself, and then just use the land nav point, move it around the target as they make adjustments. So you have your little team. You've moved outside from the classroom, wherever it is that you are in the task org, to a spot where you can conduct the exercise. First, you're going to describe to the cadets what it is that they're going to do in the exercise. So I'll just once again read what I have put down here. There are 3 scenarios that are going to be described by me, the instructor. You're going to write down all pertinent information given in the scenario in order to calculate and adjust fire grid mission. You will be given time to calculate the deviation correction, and then one of you cadets will be randomly chosen to conduct the mission and send up a call for fire transmission to the Fire Direction Center. And then at this point, you would then remind them of the information that is going to be the same throughout all the practical exercises. That is your call, their call sign, Bone Crusher 1-6, the Fire Direction Center's call sign, Aries 5-7, and then remind them of the calculation that they need to make in order to figure out the deviation correction. Observer deviation times OT factor equals deviation correction. And then remind them of the add, drop, left, right, adding being away from the observer, dropping being closer to the observer, and then left and right of the target. So then you would read aloud the first scenario to them, and of course give them some time to write things down and make their calculations. Repeat it as necessary, repeat parts as necessary. It doesn't really matter. Just make sure that they got the information that they need. So I'm going to be using, for this description video, I'm going to be using the first exercise as an example. So you are a second lieutenant conducting a platoon attack. You have fires available and choose to use them. You see 2,000 meters ahead of you in an open field an enemy infantry platoon made up of 15 soldiers at grid November Kilo 180, 51 tree. Call and adjust fire grid mission. So as I said, repeat that as necessary, whatever. Then you will choose a random cadet to do this exercise. I want to get the 3s out of the way as a priority, since they're going to LDAC soon, but mix in there a 1 or 2 as well, so that everyone has to pay attention, everyone has to be taking notes and listening, and they all get something out of the practical exercise. So the random cadet that you choose, they're the one that has to call up to the Fire Direction Center. The other cadets can help them out and help them figure things out, and figure out what they need to say for their transmission. But the person who has to end up calling up the transmission has to be the cadet that you chose, just for sort of command and control purposes, and so there's not a lot of people talking at you. And then, of course, you will act as the Fire Direction Center, giving the appropriate calls and responses to the observer. I gave you a skeleton with each individual exercise right here, and of course that is to sort of just give you an idea of what it is that you want to say for that particular exercise. And of course, if you forget a particular line, the full example adjust fire grid mission on the very back will be there for you to figure out those things that you might forget. Continuing, then you will go through the beginning of the transmission. So in this case, Aries 5-7, this is Bone Crusher 1-6, adjust fire over. This is Aries 5-7, adjust fire out. Grid November Kilo 180, 51 tree over. Grid November Kilo 180, 51 tree out. Infantry platoon in the open over. Infantry platoon in the open out. Message to the observer. Aries, 1 round and adjust. Target Alpha Foxtrot 1027 over. Aries, 1 round and adjust. Target Alpha Foxtrot 1027 out. Shot over, shot out. Splash over, splash out. So at this point, in a real transmission, that's where the round is going to hit, right? So put that cone down for the first round at that time. And this is the part that gets a little tricky. You can place, I said cone, you can place that land nav point wherever you desire in the vicinity of the target land nav point. I wanted to allow you room to play around with this however you desired, to mix it up a little bit. Just realize that as you go through the exercise then, have an idea of where it is that the correct adjustments are going to be. So if you decide to put it behind the target to the right, then realize that that first adjustment is going to be needed to be going to the left, and then they're going to have to bracket with a drop, add. Just kind of realize that and sort of know what you're going to need to do depending on where you decide to put it initially for each practical exercise. So I'll read that one more time here. Place the indirect fire cone wherever you desire in the vicinity of the target cone once you've given the message to the observer, sending the first indirect fire round. You have the freedom to mold the directional adjustments that the cadet will make depending on where you decide to place the first round. The observer deviations and the OT factor, thus also the deviation correction, are preset though. So at this point also, that's when they would obviously look up with their binoculars, see where that first round hit, and then make those calculations. Make sure that at that point, once again, remind them what it is that they would do if they don't already look like they know what they're doing, and then give them that observer deviation, but then explain to them how it is that they figured out that observer deviation, again, if they need it. So in the case for this exercise, 50 mils. Then they would calculate the deviation correction using that observer deviation that you just gave them and the information that they gained from listening to the situation at the beginning of the practical exercise. And they would calculate their first adjustment. They would also calculate the direction at this point. So they would actually need to pull out their compass, point at the target, look at what it is in mils. And this is just so that they could have some experience at looking at using a compass and looking at mils. That's just to give them some experience at all. Continuing, so you've given them the preset observer deviation, they've calculated the direction, you've reminded them how to use mils in their compass and how they make the observer deviation, or how it is that they would figure out the observer deviation, and now you just finish the rest of the transmission, moving the land nav point wherever it is that it would need to go for the rest of the transmission. And then you would just repeat this process for the rest of the practical exercises. Realize that this exercise is supposed to be at a crawl. It's not supposed to be super hard. You can stop them. You can pause them at any point, give a little bit of instruction, remind them of something, correct them if they get something wrong. The key here then is not the goal. The ultimate goal here is not so much getting through all of the practical exercises if it ends up being impossible. What's important is making sure that they have a clear understanding of why everything was done as they go through it. If you happen to get all 3 exercises done, which is the goal, and I hope that happens, awesome. If you don't, that's okay. It's not a wrong thing. If it took you more time on one particular exercise because you were explaining something, that's perfectly fine. But just realize that as you're going through it. Thank you.